Hello from Kingfisher, Oklahoma. Today we're looking at Deuteronomy 13 and 14. We got some great verses I'm super excited about, and we're going to do 6 things. First, if a prophet arises in Israel and tries to lead the children of Israel to worship something different or someone different than Yahweh, God Almighty, they should be put to death. God is testing you to see if you'll follow God, he says. Whew. Number 2, if a person is worshiping another god, this is just any old person, and you hear about it, you should drag that person out and the community should throw rocks at them till they die. You got to kill them. You got to remove that from Israel. You don't want that in any part of your nation. Number 3, if a whole city of people are worshiping another god, you've got to go destroy the city. You got to pull out all their stuff and burn it. You cannot be worshiping another god than Yahweh. So if anybody who's saying that it's a pluralistic climbing up different sides of the same mountain, you're all worshiping the one God. God's saying, no, I am the only one. You may not worship another. Number 4, you must practice what Yahweh says. Okay, not what the other nations are doing. And it gives a very interesting example. It says you can't cut yourself. You can't make baldness for yourself between your eyes for the dead or for worship. And this is linked to a verse we already read, a couple verses in Leviticus chapter 19 verse 27 and 28. And you know this one, you've heard it before, but it says, you shall not round off the corners of your beard or your head, and you shouldn't cut or tattoo yourself for the dead. I am the Lord. Now this is almost exactly the same word. It's the same idea at the very least. It's saying, hey, you can't cut yourself for the dead. And don't make any baldness either. So these 2 sections are the same. So really, it's not about having a tattoo like we think. It's about cutting yourself for the dead and weeping and gnashing of teeth and cutting your hair. And why? That seems kind of weird. But it's what the other nations were doing around Israel. So that's what God is trying to get them to avoid. They were cutting themselves in worship. They were cutting themselves when someone died. You know, they're stamping themselves. They're cutting their hair in sorrow. They're misshaping all the things. Goodness, stay holy to the Lord. Do what God asks. Number 5, there's a reminder here what animals are clean and what animals are unclean. Because remember, the book of Deuteronomy is a book of reminding and remembrance. Moses is standing in front of an audience of 0 to 60-year-olds, reminding them what God taught from Egypt till the point they're about to go into the land. These people's parents died in the wilderness because they were disobedient and didn't worship God. So now he's reminding them, hey, you're going to go in there. This is what you need to do. I'm not going to be with you, Moses says, but you need to remember. And lastly, we get into a great part. Love it. It's the law of tithing. God commanded Israel to tithe to him. 10%. That's what the word literally means. 10% tithe to God. And for those of you who are out there saying, well, that's an Old Testament thing. Jesus never said it. Well, actually, in Matthew 23:23, Jesus confronts the Pharisees and says, hey, you tithe mint and dill and, all these herbs from your garden. You're very careful to do your 10%. You're even like clipping the little bit of mint leaves and putting that in. You're so good at tithing that. But you miss compassion and mercy. He said you should be tithing and having mercy and compassion. So Jesus said you should be tithing. 10%, people. It's there. Go read it. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean what you think it means. We're going to see some things that might blow the mind about tithing here. Because we think, okay, it's a storehouse tithe. It's always got to go to the storehouse. Well, it doesn't. It doesn't go to the storehouse every time. Well, what about this? What about that? Well, guess what? They did some very interesting things with the tithe I'm going to cover. So don't miss it while we read. It's kind of a teaser. Here we go. Chapter 13. If there arise among you a prophet or a dreamer of dreams that giveth thee a sign or a wonder, and the sign or wonder would come to pass, whereof he spake unto thee, saying, let's go unto other gods which thou hast not known, and let's serve them. So even if he does something miraculous, but is leading you to another god, thou shalt not hearken unto the words of that prophet, or to the dreamer of dreams. For the Lord your God proveth you to know whether ye love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul. Ye shall walk after the Lord your God, and fear him, and keep his commandments, and obey his voice, and ye shall serve him and cleave to him. And people, at the end of time, the book of Revelation, there's the man of lawlessness coming, and he's going to do all sorts of works and wonders. And it's going to be pretty awesome, but he's going to have you try to worship something other than God Almighty. Don't do it. And that prophet or dreamer of dreams shall be put to death, because he's spoken to turn you away from the Lord your God, which brought you out of the land of Egypt. And he redeemed you out of the house of bondage, to thrust thee out of the way which the Lord thy God commanded you to walk in. He just wants to move you out of the path of God. So you shall put all evil from the midst of thee. If thy brother, the son of thy mother, or thy son, or thy daughter, or the wife of thy bosom, or thy friend which is in thine own soul, entice thee secretly, saying, let's go serve other gods, which thou hast not known, thou nor thy fathers, namely the gods of the people which are round about you, nigh unto thee, or far off from thee, from the one end of the earth, even to the other end of the earth. Thou shalt not consent unto him, nor hearken unto him, neither shall thine eye pity him, neither shall you spare, neither shall you conceal him, but you shall surely kill him. Thy hand be first upon him, put him to death, and afterward the hand of all the people. And thou shalt stone him with stones, and he shall die, because he hath sought to thrust thee away from the Lord thy God, which brought thee out of the land of Egypt, from the house of bondage. And all Israel shall hear and fear, and shall do no more such wickedness that's among you. Hey, when wickedness is promptly punished, people don't want to do it anymore. Hello? America, are you listening? If thou shalt hear, say, in one of thy cities, that the Lord thy God has given thee to dwell in, saying, certain men, the children of Belial, are gone out from among thee, and have withdrawn the inhabitants of their city, saying, let's go and serve other gods, which ye have not known. Then shalt thou inquire, and make search, and ask diligently. And behold, if it be truth, and the thing is certain, that such an abomination is wrought among you, thou shalt surely smite the inhabitants of the city with the edge of the sword, destroying it utterly, and all that is therein, and the cattle thereof, with the edge of the sword. And thou shalt gather all the spoil of it in the midst of the street thereof, and shalt burn with fire the city, and all the spoil thereof, every whit, for the Lord thy God, and it shall not be built again. And there shall cleave not any of the cursed thing to thy hand, that the Lord may turn from the fierceness of his anger, and show thee mercy, and have compassion upon thee, and multiply thee, as he sworn unto thy fathers, when thou shalt hearken to the voice of the Lord thy God, to keep all the commandments which I command to you this day, to do that which is right in the eyes of the Lord your God. So, that thing, it's got to be a pile, you got to burn it down. Nobody should hold any bit of that thing, and all the inhabitants shall die. They don't want people being pulled away from God. Ye are the children of the Lord your God. You shall not cut yourselves, nor make any baldness between your eyes, for the dead. For thou art holy people to the Lord. This is chapter 14, by the way. Thou art a holy people to the Lord your God, and the Lord has chosen thee to be a peculiar people unto thyself, above all nations that are on the earth. Thou shalt not eat any abominable thing. These are the beasts which ye shall eat, the ox, the sheep, and the goat, the hart, which is a deer. And now, friends, we're going to get a list of animals that we don't even know what it is, because this is 1611 King James. Some of them are like deer and goat, sort of antelope things, and then some of them we're just going to have to roll with it. The roebuck, the fallow deer, and the wild goat, the pygarg, that's a antelope ox thing, and the wild ox and the chamois, that's a goat antelope sort of thing. And every beast which parteth the hoof and cleaveth the cleft into claws and cheweth the cud among the beasts, that ye shall eat. Nevertheless ye shall not eat of them that chew the cud, and of them that divide the hoof, as the camel, and the hare, and the coney, for they chew the cud, but divide not the hoof. Therefore they are unclean to you. And the swine, because it divideth the hoof, yet cheweth not the cud, it is unclean to you, and you shall not eat of their flesh, nor touch their dead carcass. These ye shall eat, of all that are in the waters that have fins and scales, ye shall eat. Whoever hath not fins and scales, ye shall not eat. It is unclean to you. You can go get the fuller list back in probably Leviticus, maybe Exodus. I can't remember off the top of my head. I apologize. But the full list of all of them if you have questions. But the main thing is fins and scales for the Israelites here. And whosoever hath not fins and scales, you may not eat. It is unclean. Of all the clean birds you shall eat, but these are they which you shall not eat. You shall not eat the eagle, the ossifrage, the osprey, the glade, the kite, the vulture after his kind, and every raven after his kind, the owl, the nighthawk, and the cuckoo, and the hawk after his kind, the little owl, the great owl, and the swan, and the pelican, and the gyre eagle, and the cormorant, and the stork, and the heron after her kind, and the lapwing, and the bat. And every creeping thing that flieth is unclean to you. They shall not be eaten. But of all clean fowls you may eat. You shall not eat of anything that dieth to itself. Thou shalt not give it unto a stranger that is of thy gates, and he may eat of it. Or thou mayst sell to an alien, for thou art a holy people unto the Lord thy God. So again, he's making a differentiation. You eat this way because you're holy. We want to show that you're set apart. It's okay, the nations can eat that sort of thing, but you are mine. That's the whole point. Thou shalt not seethe, which means boil, a kid in his mother's milk. So if you're going to boil a goat in milk, it has to be a different goat than that goat's mom. Now here comes the tithe part. Thanks for waiting. Thanks for sticking with. Thou shalt truly tithe all the increase of thy seed of the field that bringeth forth by year. You shall eat before the Lord thy God in the place where he choose to place his name there, a tithe of corn, of thy wine, of thy oil, the firstling of thy herds and thy flocks, and thou may learn to fear the Lord thy God always. You want to learn to fear God? Tithe. If you're a farmer, tithe of your farming. If you work a merchant type job, tithe of your money. Tithe of your increase is the point, because it builds your faith in God. It builds your fear of God, that he's really in charge. And if the way be too long for thee, so thou art not able to carry it, for the place be too far from thee, which the Lord thy God shall choose to set his name, when the Lord thy God shall bless thee, then thou shalt turn it into money, and bind it in thy hand, and shall go up to the place of the Lord thy God shall choose. So remember, be like, hey, I know this is kind of an extreme example. Well, let's use Oklahoma. Okay, so in Oklahoma, if God put the temple in Oklahoma City and you lived way out in the panhandle, you don't want to drive your sheep and your cows from the panhandle, a 5-hour drive, let alone how far is that to walk. You don't want to drive them all there, so you sell those, take the money in your tithe, you go and walk there, and now you arrive at the temple. Here's what you can do. Thou shalt bestow that money for whatsoever thy soul lusteth at, whatever you want to eat. You can spend that money for oxen, or for sheep, or for wine, or for strong drink, and for whatever thy soul desire. And thou shalt eat it, therefore, before the Lord thy God, and thou shalt rejoice, thou and thine household, and the Levite that is within thy gates. Thou shalt not forsake him, for he hath no part nor inheritance with thee. So, here's what you do. Bring your family. Bring the Levite who's been staying with you, because you're taking care of him. That's your job. He doesn't have a place. You take care of him. And you bring that money, and you sit there in the temple, and you buy an ox with your tithe money, and your family, it gets prepared, and you eat of it in worship to God of your tithe right there in the temple. You want some wine? Buy some wine with your tithe money. Drink it in God's temple as part of your offering to God. Or strong drink, it says. Goodness, wouldn't church be a little bit different if your tithe money was used that way? Hey, we're going to use part of the tithe money to eat in front of God and drink and enjoy this. Now, it doesn't say be drunk, okay? That's very strictly prohibited in the Bible, but we just read it. The rest of the tithe money stays there. Interesting. And at the end of 3 years, thou shalt bring forth all the tithe of thine increase that same year and lay it up within your own gates. What? It doesn't go to the temple at all. At the end of the 3rd year, you're going to lay up your tithe in your own gates? And the Levite, because he hath no part nor inheritance with thee, and the stranger, meaning not an Israelite, and the fatherless, an orphan, and the widow, which are within thy gates, they shall come and eat and be satisfied, that the Lord thy God may bless thee in all the work of thine hand which thou doest. Okay. So you're going to, every 3 years, you're going to lay up your tithe, and you're going to use that tithe, not for yourself, but you're going to take care of the Levite, which is the priest. You're going to take care of widows and orphans and strangers, and you're going to use that money to bless them from God. Or if you're a farmer, you're going to use that cow to bless that widow or Levite. Are we getting a different view of tithing right now? I think so. I think this is pretty incredible that God uses everything to take care of those around him. So, hey, hope you learned something today. I'm excited to keep plowing through Deuteronomy. I'll catch you next time.